What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome. I am the Crypto Crow, and we're going to be talking about Cardano today. I've done some more number crunching. I'm going to share what I've come up with because it's actually pretty interesting when you break it down in an Excel sheet. You can actually see the growth and what's going on. Yeah, we're going to discuss what I think has actually been going on with Cardano and why and where I think we're heading. So we'll be right back after this little, very quick disclaimer.
If it's bull or bear.
All right, that's it. So welcome. So we're going to dive right into this because there's a lot that I want to say, and there's some information I'm going to show you. And every once in a while, I get in a little tizzy and I start having a little bit of a price fit. And I'm like, why does this happen? Why is this going on? And, I've been really bogged down. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure with the markets and what's going on and what's happening in Japan and in the Middle East. And there's just so much negative stuff going on. And I'm not trying to say, well, I'm just going to try to ignore all that and just hope for the best. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that sometimes I just need to look deeper into things that bring me joy so that I better understand it and I have a little more of an understanding as to what to expect. Because what's happening right now isn't all too different from what we saw in the COVID dump. Okay, when the pandemic was announced and all of that started kicking off and we had all the lockdowns and all of the craziness, obviously we got a big dump in the market. Well, we're having it's a different kind of dump now. It's more of an economic dump. And there's obvious news that people are talking about how the Fed is put a plan together to basically buy like $50 billion in Treasury bonds, which is basically like kind of a form of like quantitative easing, as I understand it. It's that money printer. That money printer is going to start churning and churning even more. And ultimately, if you go back to videos from guys like Benjamin Cowan. And I've talked about this myself. Basically, when the money printers start really kicking into high gear and the government starts printing, well, what happens? That's when the altcoins really start taking off. And so the narrative around altcoins is going to start building up, I'm sure. Now, we may very well get one more leg down, and I'm not overly concerned with it. And I'm going to show you why, because there are a lot of narratives going on around Cardano all the time. It's always been the case since 2017. Okay, it's really nothing new. But for newcomers to Cardano, sometimes it's difficult to understand who to believe, what to believe. There's so much pro and con and up and down and this and that. It's difficult. So I'm just going to lay it out by the numbers. And I'm just going to show you very specifically what I think is happening. But first, I'm going to show you a little bit of information about where we're at with the stake pool readiness. Basically, as of right now, I was looking at the other site, and the other site was basically saying, we're in the 60s. But this is basically saying, I think this is probably a little more accurate, if I'm honest. This is on CardanoScan.io, and we're basically sitting at about 56.64%. So we need a full 70% for the Chang hard fork to officially kick off. I know my dev is finally going to be updating it. The Crow node is going to be updated before the weekend. I still think there's a chance that either by this weekend or leading into Rare Evo, we're going to see the Chang hard fork kick off, and I'm super excited about that. Also, how many of you guys and gals out there knew about this? I just discovered this digging around. This is Cardano Ballot. This is on GitHub. You can download this right now. It's basically open source. Cardano Ballot is a user-friendly hybrid on and off-chain voting system developed by the Cardano Foundation. Cardano Ballot leverages a set of back-end services combined with front-end applications to facilitate voting within the Cardano ecosystem. How you like them apples? I didn't even know this existed. I need to figure out a way to use this for something. I don't know what, because I would love to see more countries, cities, I don't know, anything start using this, because this would really drive up adoption and use on the Cardano blockchain. But it is what it is. So if we're going to look at the price real quick, obviously we came all the way down here to around the, what is that, 28 cents? It's crazy. We wicked down that low, and we're currently sitting at around 32 cents. And, there's a chance that we could come back down a little bit lower. And you can see basically this low all the way back here is around 23 cents. And some people are going to say, oh, wow, that's a sign that Cardano's dead and it's dying and it just can't move and this and that. And before I dive into these numbers, before I show you very specifically why that's a bunch of malarkey, I want you to understand something that you don't really hear many people talk about, right? It's easy to kind of get this tidbit of information lost in the shuffle. You have a lot of projects out there, and I'm not even going to name them, okay? Because I'm so beyond all the toxicity, and I keep getting pulled back into it, and I get caught up, and I'm like, oh God, it makes me feel dirty. I hate it, okay? There's just way too much toxicity, bullshit, fake narratives, and make believe everything. I mean, it's just like there's too much of it. And the thing though is that a lot of these more centralized, focused blockchains out there, what do they generally have in common? Well, one, they have more insider holdings. So you have team members and initial investors, and a lot of these folks that basically got an early start in having a really large amount of tokens. Okay. And with that, it's the same way like when I got started in 2017, and then I turned the $3,000 into 90 grand in 60 days. I showed all you guys how I did it. And that's kind of ultimately what helped me grow. And then I grew my channel and I started getting more, and I started doing paid segments and just doing a lot of different things to try and basically improve my overall situation. And then from cycle to cycle, I've been able to improve what I'm able to accomplish each cycle, right? The same thing is true for developers of projects, where if they get early allocations, or even some of these influencers that get early allocations to projects, right? There's a lot of that going on today, which I don't really do any of that yet, really. Which is basically, a lot of YouTubers, the companies reach out and they say, hey, if you promote us, we'll give you a seed round allocation so that you could buy up a bunch of tokens super, super cheap before they hit the retail market. They'll probably be worth X amount more by the time it hits the retail market. Ultimately saying, hey, we're going to let you buy a bunch of tokens to dump on your fans if you just promote us, right? And that's been like the new thing. But the thing is that a lot of these projects, they're the owners, the teams, and the venture capital groups, they all get these big allotments of tokens. Well, in those instances, it makes more sense for these VCs and a lot of these groups that are more inclined to dealing with like the Ponzi-nomics of the tokenomics of some of these projects they hold mass allocations for. It's easier for them to pump money into paid advertisements and things like that to create A, exit liquidity, and B, price go up momentum, because it improves their ability to make more money off of the people that are basically buying into the narratives or buying into the advertising. But you don't see a lot of that outside of more centralized, controlled blockchains. So the question then is a matter of what matters most: the decentralized nature of things like Bitcoin, okay, which it doesn't have a central body. It doesn't have any one particular person or group of people that are controlling the narrative of it, right? You had a lot of the early cyberpunks that are developing on it and building on this blockchain and doing things with it and promoting it, right? Mining it, just being a part of the community overall is what ultimately drove its value up to where it is today and beyond. And then you have a lot of these more centralized projects that, let's face it, the venture capitalists come in, they get a big early allotment of tokens, they invest in the development of the project, and then they throw more money into marketing. What you don't see happening with projects like Cardano is exactly that. Number one, you don't have the Ponzi-nomics that's attracting all the venture capitalists. If you don't have that, then you don't have a lot of the other side money from the outside world putting money into marketing the blockchain. So therefore, it has to grow on its own merit. And by that, I'm saying that There is no entity out there that's pumping millions of dollars into creating narratives around the marketing of Cardano. Everything it has done since 2017, it has done the same way Bitcoin did, by building the community of users and developers and early adopters to establish the narrative that it merits on its own, not through paid advertisement. So when I show you these numbers that I'm going to show you, you have to keep in mind that all of these new milestones, both in development and price action and use and wallets and all of these things, have come about based off of the merit Cardano has established solely for working. That's it. So you can't very well say, well, this is a decentralized blockchain, and then pump a bunch of money into marketing it, because that is ultimately to benefit who? Especially if it can be considered as security in a climate where the governments are trying to label everything possible as security, unless they're maybe somehow involved in it. So that's the narrative, right? And now it becomes a centralized versus decentralized narrative. And the centralized narrative typically has a lot more money flowing into it to benefit itself over decentralized narratives, especially new technologies that are changing the way the world is likely to operate. So I want you to keep that information in your mind, because as I show you these numbers, I also want you to think that if Cardano has achieved all of this up to this date, how do you think things are going to change when not only is it on-chain, truly decentralized, but the community is then in control of voting for and implementing marketing plans utilizing the 1.5 billion ADA that is currently locked in Treasury, growing more every single day as adoption continues to rise, and basically all of these on-chain metrics that continue to grow week after week, year after year. I know I'm struggling because of my water. How do you think things are going to improve? Okay, because I know what it costs to do, a lot of consistent, regular marketing on a lot of the paid websites and things. I mean, you can get Forbes, you can buy articles and advertisement, sponsored articles and placement all over the place pretty inexpensively, few grand. Okay. How do you think this is going to change over time as marketing starts to really kick in at the control of its user base? Something that's never happened to date. At one point, Cardano went from 2 cents to basically $3.30 with no marketing, just the sentiment of the community watching this flower grow. Now, let's look at some of the data here. Where is it? Here we are. So here are the numbers. So, yes, I'm going to cut my own face out of this for right now. So you can see here basically, or wait, maybe I should just open it up here. Yeah, I'll open it up here. There we go. That's better. All right. So basically what you're seeing here is you're going to see December 11th of 2017, the price was 10 cents. This was the low point of that market cycle. And the daily trade volume was 38.98 million, and there were only 5,634 active addresses on that date. Okay. From there, we moved into the peak of that market cycle, which was the 3rd of January of 2018. The price got all the way up to $1.39, or roughly $1.33. It depends ultimately on what exchange you're looking at. This was the height or peak of the market. I should have labeled that as the peak. And there was $813 million worth of daily trade volume. Okay. This is basically no time. This is roughly a year from when it was just 10 cents and about 39 million in volume. And the growth in the number of addresses wasn't that significant. It went up to 8,003. This is when basically Cardano was an idea, a white paper, a roadmap, and a wallet that was clunky and gave people a lot of issues, okay? And the narratives began then. Cardano's going to be this. It's vaporware. It's a ghost chain. Its wallet's trash. It takes forever to do anything. It gets seized up and stops, right? We see all those narratives. It's something different every market cycle. People that hold other things and fear Cardano's growth always run to making up all kinds of stories and narratives, and even paid narratives we see in competitive projects. Now, if we look on December 16th of 2018, the price came back down all the way to 2 cents. This is where I was doing videos. I was telling everybody this is a really good time to get some Cardano. At one point, you were able to get 400,000 ADA for one Bitcoin. 400,000 ADA for one Bitcoin. And this was the low of the market. And the daily trade volume at this low was all the way down to 8.8 million. Okay, so it was pretty dramatic drop. After all of this, sentiment was leaving, the market was down, nobody was happy, everybody was frustrated. Even number of addresses, the active addresses dropped to 2,726. You could have thought Cardano's dead. Everything's dead. It's never coming back. It is what it is. Time to move on. Until March 13th of 2020. Well, look at that. Cardano is back down to 2 cents. This is a dead chain. This is absolutely dead trash ghost. This is vaporware. This was where we were from the low to the peak, because after this, it goes straight to the peak. But even though the price was down to 2 cents in 2020, there was $109 million in volume going, and the number of active addresses was higher at this point than it really has ever been during any of these previous dates. 8,120 active wallet addresses. You fast forward to the peak after the dead chaining, after the ghost chains, the vaporware, and everything else. September 2nd of 2021, we rose to $3.25. This was the peak. We went from $109 million to $7.3 billion in volume, just like that, with 150,000 active addresses at the time of this market peak. But then lo and behold, we come all the way back down October 18th of 2023, long after all of this is concluded, and it's all the way back down to 24 cents. This is the low to the peak, with only $108 million, once again, in volume, with 38,256 addresses. There's so much additional data that I want to pipe into to make more accurate calculations. This is just the beginning. But it was down to 24 cents. Then here we are now, August 4th. Well, it's the 7th now, but I'm looking at August 4th, 2024. The price has barely gone up. It went all the way up, which I didn't calculate this. I didn't add this to the chart because I looked at it as kind of an ignition, right? I feel like it was kind of an ignition test for the rocket ship to Mars. Because in March, obviously, we went all the way back up to, I think it was like 80 cents or something like that. When Bitcoin, the news of the ETFs and all of that stuff started taking over. Well, here we are, 29 cents to the peak. And we're at $979 million with 36,990 active addresses right now. And what else is preparing to happen? The Chang hard fork. The Chang hard fork is going to be here within a week, maybe a week and a half, 2 at max. And we go fully decentralized. We unlock 1.5 billion plus ADA in Treasury that the public is then going to start talking about and voting on what happens with it, establishing marketing plans for the first time since Cardano's inception, grants for developers, and just all sorts of things, which we've already been doing through Project Catalyst, but this is just the beginning. And then April 5th of 2025 is around where I expect the next peak of the market to be. Where do we stop? Nobody knows. But what I do know is that if we look at all of these numbers, and if we were to lay them all out, over an ebb and flow chart where all of this is calculated into each other, what we would have is a very strong macro bullish channel of chain growth, wallet growth, volume growth by the averages. And I believe, quite frankly, that this next market cycle is going to be absolutely astronomical. I really do. And everything that's happening right now, this is all happening because this is what a genuine blockchain built and grown on its own merit looks like without big marketing dollars pumping up sentiment. The sentiment is going to grow with the price because the use and all of these other numbers are going to start getting people's attention. And one of the things that I do believe is going to be one of the big catalysts to that is the Chang hard fork. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week. It may take a month or two for things to set in. But when people start realizing that we're actively able to start putting that treasury to use, especially while the price of Cardano continues to go up, what happens when Cardano gets back to $1? Well, now you got $1.5 billion plus that we're able to start utilizing as more revenue is coming into that treasury on all the transactions that are continuing to grow. I'll be very curious to see, and that's something I need to look at too. There's also one thing that I want to show, because there's a lot of stuff that I would really love to be able to know that I don't necessarily have access to. And that is ultimately, I would love to know things like what was the total number of stake pools at these specific dates? And not only that, I want to know how much ADA is pledged to the total number of stake pools on those dates against the total market supply, the total market cap, and on-chain volume, as well as the number of active addresses, because I think all of that is going to paint a picture. Every detail to all of these metrics will paint a picture with lots and lots of different colors. And the more colors, the more you can define the image within that picture, the better you can tell what it is, right? And so there's information that I'd love to have that I just don't have access to. And so at some point I'm hoping to get access to some of that stuff. But overall, the whole point is, leave all of the negative narratives behind. It doesn't matter. And if I want to be very fair, I don't even think any of the information that's come out about Solana, all of the red flag, everything that's happened with Solana, ups and downs all through the years, everything that's happened, the public doesn't care. Nobody cares. What they care about is number go up. They'll be damned to pay any attention to anything that's going to counter what they're enjoying right now, which is a rise. And that's okay. I understand it. I completely understand it. I don't really fault anybody for that. You know, my old business partner back in the day used to call me a purist all the time. He would tell me, "You're such a purist. You're such a purist. I'm a capitalist. You're a purist." And I'm like, "What do you mean? What is a purist? What does that even mean?" And he the way he broke it down to me was like, "Well, let's say it costs you 1 penny to make this pencil. You would sell it for 2 pennies because it only costs you 1 penny. So why charge more than you have to make a profit? I would sell that pencil for $1 and I would make 99 cents for every pencil that I sold." He's like, "You're a purist." And I feel like some of that is still kind of true to this day. I mean, I obviously understand, business and things a lot more than I did then. It's like you have to plan for the future and there's so many different expenses. There's a lot more to it, right? But the point is like, why charge more than you have to make a living? And so, I'm one of those people where it's like, I look at things like Solana and I see what's happening with it, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter if it's like, like I made the joke on Twitter where I basically said, if I were to hold up a rubber ducky and I told you that this rubber ducky could fly, and I just started kicking that rubber ducky into the air so that you could see it fly, so that you could see it in the air. And I kept kicking it over and over into the air as you watch this rubber ducky fly until my leg got so tired that I stopped and the rubber duck slammed into the ground. And I was joking, I'm like, "That's Solana." In my opinion, that's the way I view Solana. But the reality is we don't know when or if anything's ever going to happen to Solana. The sentiment around Solana is so strong because of all of the money that has gone into building its ecosystem, its echo chamber, and everything else, that it may never fail. That blockchain could shut down for an entire month and people will just be waiting, shaking, going through withdrawals, waiting to buy more shitcoins. And that's okay. It is what it is. But I am on the side of decentralization. I am definitely more on the side of empowering people long term against like a quick buck today for something that could go down the tubes tomorrow. I want something that is going to change the world long term and extend itself beyond one particular market niche. I want to be a part of something much, much bigger than just a quick profit. You know, there's quick profits everywhere. And I think a lot of us that are in the Cardano ecosystem, we've seen everything already. We've seen it all. We've seen the ebbs and flows of the market. We've seen the rise and falls. We've seen the pitfalls. We've seen the hangups people have. We've seen how long it takes to get from point A to point B in the roadmap. We've seen all that. But the point is, we understand it. And when you understand what's being built and why, especially now, especially with everything going on today, the world over, we need a truly decentralized blockchain with smart contract capabilities, strong throughput, interoperability, and the means of working with other blockchains all over the place. We need that, and we need it to be damn secure. In a world full of cyber attacks left and right and everything and anything that could go wrong typically do, you know, that's why we're a part of the Cardano ecosystem. It's not just about making money. The money will likely come. I used to always say, and I still do, passion to profit. You find something that you believe in, and if you believe strongly enough in it, it's very likely others are going to join you. And when they do, you rise that thing up. And that's ultimately what we're doing with Cardano, because that's the only way it has risen. On its merit, through its community, through the people that are studying it, understanding it, and understand what to expect from it in the future. That's why we're involved today, and that's why we're against a lot of the shit projects out there that are the complete polar opposite of what Cardano is, what it does, and what it's going to be doing for the world in the future. And that's all I have to say. Until next time, thanks for joining me. Crow your coins, and I'll see you again soon. Go buy a daggone t-shirt, and I'll see you at Rare Evo in August.